Welcome everybody to the Mighty Dream podcast. We have a very special guest in the building today, Pastor Ranjith Isaac. He's the senior pastor of City Rock Church, and I'll let him introduce himself and tell us a little bit about what he does and who he is, and a little bit of that.
Good to see you, Reinhard, in Chennai.
Same here.
Yes, I'm Ranjith. I lead a church called City Rock Church, and I'm married to a Sri Lankan named Saroja. I have a beautiful daughter, Yansa, and I love coffee and metal music.
Yeah, nice. This I've heard this introduction, the same introduction every single time, and it's epic. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure for us to have you. We've known each other for a couple of years, and our journey started in Chennai, in Double Roti, and the funny thing is, we're here in Chennai to do the Hurl conference here, and so much of who we are today as an organization, as an identity, came from those conversations that happened in Chennai all those years, almost 2 years ago. And the funny thing is, I had this dream inside, I had this vision inside, but I didn't have the words to express it. And some of the questions you've asked, some of the questions that you guys had for me, the group of pastors that were there, a group of leaders that were there in that dinner, forced me to go back and said, God, I need the words to express my vision, and really depend on God to give me the words to do it. And so without further ado, we're going to be talking about spirituality today and the importance of having a good spiritual life and being grounded spiritually as a leader. And in your opinion, what is the level of importance you have to give your spiritual life as a leader?
Okay. The first question was a different question. So, okay.
Anyway, just go for it.
Go for it. Okay. I think first I'll start with defining what is spiritual leadership is all about. Spiritual leadership is all about understanding one thing very clear, that we are created by God and we are created for Him. And someone who's super sensible to the needs of the God and willingly risking his life to make sure that the purpose of God has been fulfilled, and also has the capacity to influence people to make sure the purpose of God has been fulfilled. And yes, the whole spiritual leadership is about understanding that we are all created for a purpose, and how do we live on this earth and influence people and make sure God's purpose has been fulfilled. Yeah.
So how do you lead a group of people when you're in a position of leadership and you have a group of people that look towards you? How do you lead them in terms of how do you create those spiritual values, and how do you lead people?
Yeah. So when it comes to spiritual leadership, there's a proper mix of or physical ability and the spiritual ability. So God already put in our DNA some of the natural abilities. Someone who's a spiritual leadership, who's into spiritual leadership, he will be able to have the capacity to blend both this, the physical ability and also tap into the spiritual ability. And when it comes to spiritual leadership, it's completely a different definition from the secular leadership. And the spiritual leadership is all about making God famous through serving people. In the secular leadership is about making my name famous by exploiting people. So it's more about serving. It's more about collaborating with each other's grace to make sure that only God's name takes the whole glory. And so we need to have this value while we are leading people, a group of people, in the spiritual leadership.
It's so important to have that as a value. And when you go into places where that value is not valued by other people, it's so important for you to personally have that value. So which brings me to my next question. What is the role of faith in the journey of a leader? Faith and even having spirituality. What's the role of faith and spirituality?
So when it comes to vision, how do we know it's from God? Vision is always bigger like God, and it will be smaller like us. So if someone says, I can do this vision, that means it's not from God, because always the vision is bigger than our capacity, bigger than our resources. So that is where the faith plays a bridge role between the vision and bringing it to reality. So always there is a gap between the vision and the reality. That is where we need to tap into this faith, able to believe whatever he has said, and able to completely trust every word of God. And without faith, we cannot accomplish vision. We can do it, but it might be our own vision. Abraham, God promised, he got the baby delivered, but it wasn't the baby. It was the baby. It became a curse. So always there's a gap between vision and reality, and the faith fills in that gap.
And like you said, when you hijack the plan of God with your own vision, you end up losing the big picture. And so let's talk about the importance of having a personal spirituality and the discipline that is required, whether it's prayer or whether it's having a devotional life and a reflection of where you are and awareness of where you are. What's the importance of having that?
There is a big confusion or kind of a misleading in the present generation leadership. So the spiritual leadership is completely different, as I told you earlier. So we really need to, it's not about the charisma alone. Yes, we need the charisma, but it's not about the charisma. There is also a character also involved. When Samuel was looking for a next king, and Jesse kind of lined up all the potential leaders, but God was not so happy about it, because he's wanted to see the attitude. He wanted to see the integrity part, So the spiritual leadership is all about who you are inside when there's nobody around you. So a couple of things goes hand in hand, for a spiritual leader. Knowledge about God, knowing God. For Moses, when God gave a huge vision, to redeem people from the bonded labor and set them free for worship. And he had so many questions. And one of the questions was if they ask, how do I tell who is the God, how the God looks like? And he said, I am the Yahweh. The knowledge about God really helped him to understand when he went through crisis. So every spiritual leader, without having the knowledge about God, he needs to know the master. He needs to know who is the CEO of this vision. That's very important. Second, it should not stop in knowledge. It also help you to knowing God is very, very important. In Numbers we can see first it was a very formal, kind of interviewing, I want you to go there. Later we can see how Moses progressed his relationship was. God said, I'm not going to speak riddles to you, and I'm going to show the full form of who I am. And God even said, in the times in the Old Testament, it was very hard to. He never reveals himself, but he is able to say that Moses is my friend. He can walk into my presence anytime. So knowledge about God should lead you to knowing God, and knowing God will help you to have the knowledge about God. So this is a mandatory quality of a spiritual leader. We can draw 10 principles how to lead. We can do 5 tips to go to the top. All these things.
And now ChatGPT can come up with all ChatGPT. So you don't even have to have personal knowledge about it.
So it's really, we need to know that I'm not the CEO of the vision. It's God is the CEO of the vision. I'm just a manager. I'm just a steward. So the knowledge about God will help us to know who my God is. That's really important in spiritual leadership.
So in those terms of what do you think about the importance of having a leader and who is spiritually minded, who is rooted and grounded in the word and in faith? How does this affect their decision making?
So I can, when you go to a doctor, we always deal with the symptoms. If I'm having some headache, I'll take a tablet for the headache, and having something with the stomach upset, I deal with the symptoms. So when I go to the doctor, he deals with the core issue. And he will ask me all the symptoms, but he will not deal with the symptoms, but he will know the real issue. So even in the spiritual leadership, the basic core issue, in decision making is simply it's pride. So once I carry the spirit of pride, I become independent, and my way, my way is right way, and I'm becoming more success driven. Then started becoming people pleaser. Then human's voice is more important than God's voice. So once I start moving in pride, I will stop depending on God. So it is all about whatever I think, whatever I want, I will do it.
Yeah.
So what happens with the decisions? What happens when I lead people with pride? God becomes my enemy, not my partner. Like Bible clearly says, God opposes the pride. So we're supposed to partner with God, but now God becomes the enemy and not my partner.
You set yourself against him.
Yeah, and no more grace is available. For those who are humble, God says, I'm a law for grace, because in spiritual leadership, we need grace. It's not about my strength.
Sure.
And third thing, what happens is God stops speaking to a person who is not depending on him. So when you don't get the word from God, when I'm losing the source, and eventually I'll lose the clarity, I'll be doing it. How Samuel and how Saul, he thought he was the right track, but he lost it completely. Because you become a people pleaser. He was more of my leadership role is more important. He missed the way. He started making a lot of wrong decisions that led him to be thrown out of the kingdom.
Yeah. And so I'm glad you touched on this subject of pride and humility, because my next question was going to be, how important is it for a leader to lead with humility and integrity?
Yeah. So a lot of times we always think, we need to show up like a strong personality, someone who is super charismatic, somebody who's got a lot of stage presence. So these things will add a lot of value, but humility attracts people. Humility is one of the ways you can influence people easily. So pride always, it's like a bad breath. I will not know, but people around me will know. So they will not come closer to me. So leadership is all about influence. And the more I am humble, I can, it's like a magnet. I'll draw people into the leadership, So I like, Paul being a great church planter, a great theologian, but he was humble enough to talk about his spiritual weakness. He was humble enough to be vulnerable about his anger, his pain and everything. So I think the humility is one of the important attributes that every leader should possess. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. The humility is thinking less about yourself. That's all about. We don't have to think like a cockroach, lizard. That's not the thing. But just be yourself. Be confident with what is identity, and just go forward. But humility is important.
So how do you practice humility? How do you practice and how do you include this culture of humility and service into your leadership style or into your leadership?
Yeah. So I started the ministry journey when I was 19. So I had to work with different generations, work with different leaderships, and work with different mindsets.
And that's cultures. Always so easy.
Always so easy. But at this point of time, God has been pushing me, giving more desire to reach out the young generation, which is called Gen Z, 13 to 25. I'm in 80s, so trying to understand them. So I'm completely reworking on my whole leadership style, my church approach. It's more of before one man talking, everybody listens. But now I need to be humble enough to ask questions. What do you guys think about this passage? Before, whatever I say is right. So when I want to reach one group of people, I really need to, unlearn a lot of things what I learned, and some things which worked 5 years back, it will not work here. So what I am practicing right now, I won't say it is easy. It's a bit hard, but what I am practicing right now is, so being open about my strength and weakness. So I'm being more open about it. I have anger issues. I don't like people who come late to church. So, so being open about I'm not good in administration and my strength. So to practice humility, just tell, like, what is your strength, what is your weakness, and be open for feedbacks. Usually, coming from a Pentecostal background, being a pastor, we don't like feedbacks. But now, after the sermon, I need to check: did I speak your language? Am I fast? Did it meet your needs? It's good to hear the feedback. Some decisions I make, it may not work. It may not be from God. But it's good to have feedbacks, and be open to learn from everyone. From the security, we have a security there. Sometimes I get inspired. He's responsible even now. At this, he's got a lot of medical conditions, but he faithfully comes 9 to 5 job he does. I can learn something from him. I can learn something from someone who serves off stage. So there's always an opportunity to learn from anybody, someone who's humble, and be open to admit mistakes. When everything goes well, we take the credit. When something goes wrong, we say because of him. Because traffic, so a lot of things we try to, be open to admit your mistakes. And lastly, be, always, intentionally promote others. So that is what we need to do in practicing humility in our leaderships. So leadership is not, we don't use the title to promote who I am, but I can use my influence to promote other people.
Is to raise other leaders, to raise people to where they can fulfill the call of God in their lives. And it's not just about you fulfilling your call, but it's enabling people to fulfill their call as well. And
so I like the way how Paul sees Timothy as he's a spiritual son, co-laborer, co-partner. Like his language is, I think, those days it's very collaborative of doing things. He doesn't treat people like a slave. He doesn't treat people like a project. But he said, let's partner together. Let's work together. So that's how we need to practice humility. In this generation,
that's amazing. So let's change gears a little bit. So now, going from a personal style of leadership and stuff like that, how do you influence culture in an organization to embrace the spirituality, and what is the influence of spirituality that it has on an organization's culture?
So I strongly believe the rise and fall is on the leadership. Is based on the leadership. If the organization is growing well, it's about leadership. If the organization is falling down, it's about the leadership. So if the leader, how much ever he's been convicted, the knowledge that he has got about Christ, that's going to help him to frame the values, the philosophies of organization. So it really matters, what he has experienced in his life with God, and so 3 values I always follow. I try to follow also is the character is above charisma, people above profit, and towel above title. So this is 3 values I always, if somebody is too talented, but for me, I look into a character. And if I need to use someone on stage, if I need to, use someone for a ministry purpose, yes, it's good to have charisma, but character plays a major role. Is it, my profit is not important, but people are more important. So concern for them, compassion for them, that really helps. And also, it's not about title, it's about carrying the towel and washing the feet of the disciples.
Wow. Next question is, how does spiritual values how can it foster a positive and positive workplace environment?
So Jesus modeled so well. He had a grand vision, a great vision, and he chose the unqualified and spent a lot of time with them and made them qualified for the work. So one of the strongest thing, how can someone, just die for someone? How is it possible? It's simply because he loved them. So if I'm in the position of leadership, if a core value in my church, in my organization, the expression of love can be different, but is there love is a motivation for everything? Am I loving my job? Am I loving the people who are sitting next to me? Like, is it a competitive environment am I setting up? Is it a complementing environment I'm setting up? So one is love. It's always, so a lot of times I see young people like, they just don't love to go to work. They just push themselves, like they just hate it. I strongly believe, Joseph, wherever he went, he was faithful. Not all the time it was a godly leader, it was abusive leader. So it doesn't matter where you are. So if you're working in a company, you need to love the company's vision and serve. I mean, that's what I learned it. So a lot of things I may not agree with my leader, but for a time and season, God has appointed me. So it starts from the leadership, like, how we do things out of love. And the second thing is Christian leadership, one of the values important is serving. Jesus had to dirty his hand to make the feet look good. So using my influence, using my time, talent, treasure, to make other person good. If the two things works, because everybody wants to join an organization to grow. Everybody wants to, be part of a vision so that they want to add value and they also get benefited. So we need to kind of foster love, serving culture into it. And love will transform people and they're going to follow you out of trust, not on a contract basis.
Sure. And it's not a transactional thing at that point. It becomes a very relational thing.
So that's the challenging part, because spiritual leadership and secular leadership is totally different. So even the leader should understand it's a spiritual leadership. The people in your spiritual organization also need to understand that we are, working in a godly environment. So so it's very difficult to to balance when I should become professional, when I should play a pastor role. It's very difficult, but we can establish it eventually.
It takes time. To do that. All right. So let's shift gears a little bit. Now, what are some common challenges spiritual leaders face, and what are some strategies to overcome those challenges?
Personally, for me, what are the challenges in a spiritual leadership is sometimes the God-given vision becomes a burden for me. Like, that's too heavy. So all the time I'm thinking how am I going to fulfill the purpose of God? Am I in the mark? So is God, part of this? Am I acknowledged by God? And too much of even when you sit down in prayer, you get the budget coming and you get the person who's not replied your mail. So it's so destructive, to have a vision and also to sit in the presence of God. Yes, we want to be in the presence of God so that we can lay down our burden, but I find difficult with all this thought process, so many things happening in my mind. So, second thing is our busy schedule, because the world is running so fast. It's more of a rat race. So sometimes I'm also pushed to run like someone. So in the pandemic, everybody went online, everybody had a YouTube channel. So I was thinking, okay, am I not spiritual enough to, or why don't I trust God for all these gadgets and stuff? But it's very difficult to stop the busy schedules and the other challenge I have is people oriented. What people will think, what people will say. Even though we will preach saying that we should be God driven, but end of the day, when couple of believers doesn't come to a church, you question about your leadership. You question about am I doing a good job on a Sunday service? So some people orient is and hurts. That's part of life. Some people bring joy into your life. Some people bring scars into your life. And dealing with hurts, first reaction is how can I hurt them back? And forgiving them, it takes a lot of time. Another thing called balancing your family, your ministry, your sometimes
that's a big thing.
So we feel so guilty to take a day off. When the world is dying, you're chilling. So many things. It's fine difficult to be a spiritual leader, to keep God as a center. And the solution, what I've been practicing of late is God. Before he wants to change the world, he wants to change me. It took 80 years for Moses to prepare to finish the job. So I need
Jesus 30 years.
It took 30 years. So for me, I should come to a place, that God is working in my heart than the people. So repentance is the key to stay fresh, in the presence of God. I might think, and I'm doing well, I'm preaching a good sermon, people appreciate me, and my social media is like growing well. But my heart condition is more important for God, So repentance, intentionally, and scan it through any words, I hurt someone, unforgiving, not able to forgive people. So repentance helps me to stay closer to God and to be aligned in the presence and aligned in the purpose of God. And second thing is the solution for how to stay fresh or to be a spiritual leader is being vulnerable. So I'm not a hero. I'm not a superhero. So we need to find your constants where you can be yourself. Even there's nothing wrong a leader crying out. Like after Moses died, people cried. After Joseph died, people cried. Even Jesus wept. So somehow we have this culture that leaders should not cry. So that's okay. There's nothing wrong that you cry.
You can't stay crying.
Can't stay crying. So be vulnerable as much as possible. Not everybody. Then again, you become a clown in your organization. But find your constants. And a third thing, I really love to do this. Nurture friendships. So I know for when to go to whom. So at least I have a fallback. The couches. Okay, I'm struggling with this. I can go to this person. I need to relax. I can go with this person. So in leadership, one of the struggles is we miss a lot of friends. We kill a lot of friendships, relationships, just to accomplish the vision. If we can able to balance everything, at the end of Jesus' ministry, you're no longer slaves. You're my friends. If we are able to find good friends in your life, and finally pursue, keep pushing. Keep trying, keep getting closer to God, and so these are the things.
So, and I think it's very nice that you harped on this point of being relational and nurturing these relationships, because leadership innately is a lonely journey. It's something you go on by yourself, and most of the time, what happens is leaders embrace the loneliness instead of fighting against it. It's something that naturally happens as a leader, but that does not mean that's the position you take on. That doesn't mean that that's the right way to go. I believe, I'm a very relational guy, and I believe in having very strong relationships. And somehow, while I've had that in my leadership journey, or even in just my personal journey, I've amassed a lot of friends. But then when it came down to it, I had to separate myself from most of them, because most of them were not really my friends. And now I've come into a place where I have a few people that I fall back on, like you said, couches that you can fall back on depending on what you're dealing with. And because of that, my life is richer because of the people that surround me, because of the people that speak into my life and pour life into me. And so, yes, leadership is lonely. Yes, a lot of decisions. At the end of the day, the buck stops with you. At the end of the day, everything rises and falls on you. So it is a lonely place, because at the end of the day, nobody's going to take the fall for anything. You have to, and you have to take responsibility. But that does not mean you have to do it alone.
Correct.
You should have people and
Exactly.
and you must do leadership in a community. You must have your community of people that restore you when you fall, and redeem some of the things that maybe you lose along the way as a leader. Which brings us to our final topic, our final segment, real life examples of leadership, of stories, and stories maybe in your life. Maybe you can share a few stories of spiritual leaders and how they've impacted both your life or ministry. Or
so one of the blessings that I had in my life was being groomed with the right mentor. So when I was 19, I'm stepping into the ministry, and so by God's grace, I got into the right hand. And I've seen my leader, my mentor is Pastor Kalyan Kumar. And, even 24 years our relationship still going. And never seen someone who's so excited about God. I never seen someone who is so passionate about the reaching out the lost souls. Never seen someone who's grown so much, still down to earth. So even, it's not about my call. Any call, any text is approachable. And he can walk to any extent to help the people. And he can talk to for 10,000 leaders. At the same time, you can talk to 2 leaders on the coffee shop. So I think he played a major role. Like as Paul, boldly said, as I imitate Christ, you also can imitate me. So for me, I knew what is leadership, but I had a model where I can every day. I worked in the organization every day. I had the privilege to walk with them, sit with them, laugh with them. He is good in sports. He's good in politics. He's good in business. I really loved the conversations on our kitchen. Nighttime, 2:00. Let's catch up for a coffee. With someone who's planted like 100+ churches, he doesn't have to sit with me and have a coffee. These leadership qualities which I observed, which helped me to practice what I saw. Yeah. So for me, always in a spiritual leadership, be simple, be strategic, and be significant. So you don't have to worry about who's doing what. If I'm called to lead for 12 people for next 10 years, I don't mind. It's not because I'm lazy. It's not about it. But if I'm called for 12 people for next 3 years, I don't have to worry about it. But I just want to live a simple life and be strategic in all my decisions. At the same time, leave a significant mark.
Simple, strategic, and significant.
So this is my off-late hashtag.
Wow. Thank you so much. I think that's a great place to end. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for all of your insight and wisdom that you've shared with us. And also, just want to take a moment and say thank you for all of the things that you've done for TMD. You've come and shared a couple of times, and you've opened up your space for us to do the conference and the workshop and all of those things. So I just want to say thank you so much.
Thank you
for always partnering with us and always being our supporter. And so I really appreciate it. And I know that, everything that you've spoken about in terms of being relational, in terms of being simple, in terms of being all of those, I know you carry those things as values, and I know you embody them in your personal life. And I've seen that over the last couple of years. And I thank you so much for the leader that you are and for the impact that you've had on the kingdom.
Thank you, Reinhard. I think in our first conversations, one of the crises I shared about is the crisis of leadership. And as that's why, and also like this word dream. So we have a house called Dream Factory, and we did some conference on Dreamers United. And this is the mighty dream, Mighty dream. So something that you're able to fill the gap, the church struggles with leadership. The secular world struggles with leadership. That glad that you're able to pitch in, bringing in the great resources, able to challenge people, inspire people on leadership. And in the long run, I strongly believe that through TMD and many leaders will rise up, for nations, for cities.
That's what we're believing God for, that we will raise a generation of leaders. I just want to say this. I know we're kind of running out of time, but they say that Gen Z is a lost generation, or is the most lost generation or whatever. I honestly don't subscribe to that. But if that is true, it is only because they lack the sense of purpose, and they're not driven by purpose. And I believe that as the mighty dream, if we are able to just unlock that one facet of somebody's life, and get them to focus not on their own life, but the life that God has called them to, I believe that this generation can turn around and be maybe the final significant generation that turns the world around. I truly believe in the potential of this generation. So thank you for serving this generation as somebody who's a co-laborer in serving this generation. Thank you so much. And guys, it's such a pleasure and an honor to always have you guys come in on these amazing conversations that we've had over the past couple of episodes. So thank you for joining us. Peace.